leaders of the world. Welcome to Spread Love in Organizations, a podcast for purpose-driven healthcare leaders striving to make life better around the world by leading their teams with genuine care, servant leadership, and love. I'm Naji, your host for this podcast, joined today by Phil Budden, Senior Lecturer at MIT Sloan, focusing on innovation-driven entrepreneurship, IDE, and innovation ecosystems. Phil's approach combines academic, historical, and real-world perspectives on how different stakeholders can all contribute on building successful innovation ecosystems. Prior to MIT, Phil had undertaken projects on innovation and entrepreneurship for the British Prime Minister's office and served as the British Consul General to New England, where he had been responsible for transatlantic business issues, including trade and investment, corporate government affairs, as well as science and innovation. Phil has held several diplomatic posts with the British government, British Cabinet Office, British Embassy, Washington, D.C., First Secretary and Advisor to the Prime Minister, and he holds a BA and MA in History from Lincoln College, University of Oxford, an MA in History and Government from Cornell University, and a PhD in History and International Political Economy from the University of Oxford. Dr. Phil, as we call you at MIT, it's such a pleasure to have you with me today.
Naji, it is a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me onto your podcast, and I'm looking forward to chatting.
It's a really special episode today, having a great diplomat who I had this pleasure to have as a professor at MIT during innovation and entrepreneurship classes. Can you tell us, Phil, more about your personal story from learning history to diplomacy and now teaching at MIT? What's in between this great journey you have?
Well, Nadia, it's a great question. And you were a great student. It's one of the things I really enjoy about being at MIT. So, yes, you went through my CV. I was training to be a historian. Turned out I had a good memory for historical dates. I was an introvert. I loved reading. And so I wanted to be a historian, and I was training to be a historian until history happened. And this will date me. But the Berlin Wall came down. And so I pivoted and said, I don't just want to study history of the past, because history is happening around us. And so I pivoted to become a diplomat. I'd always been fairly international in my perspectives, speak a few languages, un petit peu de français. And so I always took a sort of more global perspective thing. So became a diplomat and had a wonderful 20-year career as a diplomat. And then had an opportunity to stay here in Boston. And I'm honored to be a senior lecturer at MIT's management school. Having got a doctorate before going into diplomacy, I was nicknamed Dr. Phil because there's not many diplomats with doctorates, and it seems to have stuck. And so I am not that Dr. Phil. I'm a different Dr. Phil. But that is how you find me at MIT now, getting to teach great students like you.
Thanks, Phil. Before going into where your focus is and what you worked on, you said I was an introvert. So I'm very interested with the past term, and knowing you, I would have never said you are an introvert. So I'm like, I think we're pretty similar. I'm an introvert too. So I'd love to hear why you said I was, and did you work on not becoming one? And it's definitely not the perception that I think many of us have as your students.
That's a great question, Naji. I was and still am an introvert. And it's one of the things I've had to reckon with on my leadership journey. When I was going to be an academic historian, it did not matter that I was an introvert and loved research and study. But through my diplomatic career, I had to develop and evolve. One of the misconceptions about introvert, extrovert comes down to that actually they're about the source of where we draw energy. And we introverts draw our energy and recovery from stepping back from people and recovering and re-emerging. It doesn't mean we're any less sociable. Naji and I are both very sociable people. I've seen us at Ember parties. Extroverts, however, get their energy from being around other people. And so for them, it's hard for them to be alone. So yes, people are often surprised when I tell them I'm an introvert, but I think it's important to do that because I think you can lead whether you recharge as an introvert by yourself, or you recharge as an extrovert for some strange reason, wanting to be surrounded by people. And that's one of the things I've discovered. So I reckon with my introversion. I can get up and I can teach, I can socialize, but then I need a chance to fall back. And often I will reach for a history book and just read about the world and recover in that way. But I think it just shows that there's a variety of ways of becoming a leader.
Oh, so true. And I think it relates to, if you love people, actually, it doesn't, you can be an introvert, love people, or extrovert, love people. It's just a matter that you need some time for yourself to recharge, exactly as you said. But the key for leaders is obviously caring for others, right? As we're going to be discussing today. So you've seen and helped with the birth of several ideas. Some of them turned into startups, grew. What has been for you the key for those who became successful ventures from all those that you've seen throughout the past years?
It has been fascinating. I worked on innovation when I was in government, and I'll teach about innovation here at MIT. And one of the very humbling things is just the sheer volume of ideas that people have that they want to take forward. And this is not limited to young male coders in hoodies creating the next digital dance app. It turns out that people, mid-career, who have not had a background in technology can also be great innovators. In fact, often they can be better because they know the challenges of the world. They know the problems that need to be fixed. And I love being at MIT because we're not obsessed with just the purely web-based digital apps. We have doctors and medical professionals who want to make the world better through innovation in their areas of expertise. We have people from national security and defense who want to make the world a more secure space through deep technology and hard technology. We have people who are interested in the energy transition and achieving climate net zero, which you're not going to do with digital dance apps. You need people who are going to work on fusion energy and carbon capture. And so it's a privilege to be at MIT and just see amazing people, professors, students, the broader ecosystem coming up with ideas about innovation that's actually going to have meaning for them, and they will lead that innovation through to impact.
So you mentioned several times ecosystems, and you're passionate about it and you actually work on it. So can you help us a little bit more understand and share your view about what do you mean by ecosystems that can foster innovation and entrepreneurship?
That's a great question, and I'm drawing on some fabulous MIT professors' research in this area. The ecosystem term helps us to answer a question. Why is the world not flat? Tom Friedman told us 20 years ago, the world is flat. Anything can happen anywhere. And in terms of innovation, it's not flat. In fact, it's not fair. There are perfectly good places and perfectly good people that are left behind by innovation. And so ecosystem is a model to try to understand, why does the best innovation happen in certain places? Silicon Valley, Boston, Cambridge, London on a good day. Why does it not happen in other places? Perfectly good places like Nebraska, Kentucky, Scotland, Wales. And so the ecosystem becomes our way to both answer that empirical question, but also to give us a framework to take things forward. And the thing about an ecosystem, rather like in biology, it's organic. There's a variety of different players and species. There's a variety of different assets and nutrients. Some of them are in collaborative relationships, some are predatory, some are parasitic. But this ecosystem organic model is something we've now taught for a decade based on prior research, and seems to help us explain why things happen in some places and not in others.
So can you, in a nutshell, tell us why?
I can give you the framework. So yes. And this is where my history kicks in. And so the ecosystem model helps explain why the Industrial Revolution started in England, despite its many problems, why it spread the way it did. And this is relevant today for the 21st century, and I think is really important as we head into the economic turbulence ahead. So ecosystems. in the places on the planet that do best at innovation, there are 5 key stakeholders, one of which is the entrepreneur. Then there's the traditional ones in the so-called triple helix of government, university, and big business. Now, if a committee of government, university, and big business was enough to solve problems, we'd all be rich. The challenge is that's not enough to have a committee. You need to have the entrepreneur at the table because they're the ones who are creating the enterprises of the future. And one of the things I've discovered in my corporate innovation research and teaching is sometimes big companies find it awfully hard to innovate, even if they came from an innovative startup. So you do need entrepreneurs to keep refreshing that. And as you'll have spotted, there's a 5th one, and that is what we call risk capital. So venture capital is a form of that, but also angel investing, private equity, corporate venture capital, the ones who are willing to fund the entrepreneurs. And so this 5 stakeholder model seems to apply around the world. We've taught this in an MIT program called REAP. We've now worked with 80 teams from all of the major continents, from most of the different political systems. The same 5 stakeholders seem to matter, whether you're in Chile or China, Beirut or Paris. And so this is a model that is informed by our research, but also seems to be a framework for those who want to make a real difference and lead for impact in companies and communities that matter to them.
What is the role of leadership in all that?
Oh, leadership is key. So the word innovation, people, when they hear this, they sometimes think it's technology, that all you need is a piece of technology. And MIT produces lots of technology. All you need is the app or access to the cloud or a fusion reactor. Well, the MIT approach to innovation is the technology is important, but it's not enough. You need to have leadership to go from the technology and the idea to impact, because the biggest challenge is not the technology. It's usually the people, the processes, and the systems. How do you bring the technology to bear? And innovation does not happen spontaneously or sustainably without leadership. And so I spend a lot of my time working with executives saying, you may no longer feel that you're the most entrepreneurial, tech-savvy, or innovative person in your organization, but if you're in a leadership role, your leadership is crucial at empowering people around you, supporting them to spread the love about innovation and make it safe for people to innovate. And so leadership really is the deciding factor within ecosystems, but also within companies and sectors.
I love it. And how you framed it. Leadership takes those innovative tech to impact.
Yeah,
I'll keep this.
They don't get there by themselves.
Well, a totally different question about diplomacy. Do you miss being a diplomat?
That's a great question. It was a great honor to be a British diplomat. My final job was British Consul General to New England, and especially to MIT. It was a great privilege to serve my country and my queen. So I miss aspects of that. But the interesting thing is, I still find myself performing little d diplomacy. It turns out before diplomacy had become the action of nation states, lots of people could be diplomatic. And so I actually think there are lessons from diplomacy, including in innovation ecosystems. You know, the way that an executive from a corporation engages the rest of the ecosystem requires a form of diplomacy. In the theory of diplomacy, it's often regarded as the mediation of estrangement, coping with differences. And so understanding the differences between a corporate leader and a startup venture, between a government official and a university academic. So one of the things I find myself teaching some of the students, though not you yet, Naji, is how to take these diplomatic approaches and to think like a diplomat, because it's not the same as just command and control within a company, if people still do that. It's not the same as, you know, between a professor and a student. It really does require respect, understanding, and a realization that we sometimes speak different languages when we talk about innovation and technology, even if it's all in some form of English.
Yeah, that's great to have this kind of how you transfer one part of diplomacy. And I agree, like we're diplomats talking with people, managing relationship is super important in what we do. But what is your view? I don't know if it's a politically correct question, but I'd love your current view on global diplomacy in this ongoing craziness, I would say, in the world, and unfortunate things happening.
Yes, I think it just reminds us that diplomacy is even more important than ever. Land war has sadly returned to Europe. And so there's also a need for hard-edged defense. But diplomacy never stops. And so ultimately, we're still going to be living alongside each other as nations. And so diplomacy as the way to mediate estrangement is going to be necessary. And diplomacy is not just with your friends and allies. It's with your competitors and adversaries. And so I think it's through diplomacy that we actually need to address these issues, that we need to come to some sort of halt in hostilities in the war, that we need to manage the rise of other powers in Asia, respecting differences, but also coming up with some basics. And so I actually think while the focus is on defense and the military, diplomacy is going to be hugely important. Especially in the regions I'm looking at more now, the Middle East and Africa, where I think understandings, conflict prevention, shared prosperity are going to be really important. And I think some of the diplomatic tools, respecting differences, acknowledging that we speak different languages, even if we're all basically speaking, English or Arabic or French or Spanish, understanding those differences and managing those differences, I think, is going to be important. So oddly, at the start of 2023, I think diplomacy is needed even more.
I'm going to give you now one word, and I would love your reaction to it. So the first word is leadership.
Essential. Leadership is essential. Without it, we don't make progress. And this is not just leadership for those who are technically in leadership roles. Loads of individuals can show leadership in loads of different ways.
What about entrepreneurship?
Entrepreneurship is hugely important. It's not the same as innovation. You can be entrepreneurial with a very low innovation, low tech venture. All of those people who are running corner stores or pita bread, shawarma stalls that I saw in Jordan and Egypt, or mum and pop stores or pizza stores, that's a form of entrepreneurship. And we should welcome people being brave to be entrepreneurial. We just shouldn't confuse it with innovation and the real game-changing changes that we need.
The third word is consul.
Consul. I was a consul. It means you are operating in a region. You are not the ambassador, because the ambassador is the representative to the sovereign country. So a consul is a form of diplomat, and it was my honor to be a consul for the late Her Majesty the Queen, and it gave me a great opportunity to work with partners across New England, but also realize that I was just one small part of a global diplomatic network. And it was my job to show local leadership, but leadership in support of the wider network's efforts.
The last word is spread love in organizations.
Well, I'm British, so and male, so it's hard for me to talk about this love thing. But I love the initiative that you've shown, Naji, about spreading love, because it reminds us that at the end of the day, it's about people. We were talking about innovation. Innovation is more than just technology. Innovation can be of business models or processes and people. And as much as the pandemic had us thinking about technology and being remote, and it's great, you and I get to chat and you get to record this, that is lovely. But at the end of the day, it's about people. And the diplomat in me thinks it's about connecting people. And so you need to spread that love and joy, and leadership can do that. But so can pretty much any member of an organization. Some of the most joyful people for me to work with are the ones I stroll in, who greet me at the office, and we chat about their lives and the challenges. And so I think it's really important to spread love, not least because it reminds us about leadership is about the people.
Any final word of wisdom, Phil, for leaders around the world?
It is with considerable modesty that I, as a aging white middle-class Brit, offer advice in global contexts. But leadership is really important. Leadership is the only thing that's really made a difference through history. And it's not just leaders of countries who are elected or selected. It's about leaders of companies, leaders of universities, leaders within communities, leaders of families. And so I think leadership is the thing that makes the difference. So I encourage people to think, what kind of leadership could they show? Respect diversity. I am an introvert. My leadership is in small bursts, after which I need to recover. Others will be able to show leadership in different ways. But be thoughtful about your leadership. Be respectful of the people. Leadership without followership is just emptiness. So think about what is leadership authentically in your area, and think through to the impact. What are you leading towards? What difference are you going to make in the world? How are you going to make sure that all the right people are involved and that you're having a positive impact?
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Phil, for being with me today. It was an incredible chat. Thanks for being here.
Naji, my pleasure, and I wish you lots of good luck with Spread Love. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you all for listening to Spread Love in Organizations podcast. Subscribe and connect with us on SpreadLoveIO.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Most importantly, spread love in your organizations and spread the word around you to inspire others and amplify this movement our world so desperately needs.